when we are whispering to our neighbor. Because the people watching from home will be hearing what you're whispering to your neighbor. Barbara is absent tonight, and so I've asked Karen to do the roll call for us.
Okay, Shelley Batty.
Present.
Linda Basinger. Dennis Anderson.
Here.
Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Amy Wilhite.
Here.
Jesse Buss.
Here.
Gordon Wilson. Barbara Renke. Whoops, she's excused. Steve Van Heverbeek.
Here.
Me here. He's gone. Bill McConnell.
Here.
Gary Fergus.
Here.
Vern Johnson.
Here.
Georgia Reagan. And Brian Boyce. My job
Right.
is done.
Now you'll be taking minutes.
No, I won't.
Just kidding. When I asked Barbara if she would take roll call, she said, as long as I don't have to do minutes. Roy?
Roy's here from Hillendale, but I didn't hear Joyce's name.
Have we gotten him?
Joyce was excused, so she probably
Appointed.
just skipped her. Did Roy get officially appointed? Do we know?
Yes.
We need to get him on our list. There's a question to be answered at our meeting. Has Roy been?
I will add you in, Roy, as here.
Yes. We want to make sure.
And then we'll figure it out.
Because we recognize you, so that's great. All right. First up, we have, where'd he go? There you are. Phil Lewis here from Community Services to give us a who we are and what we do and who am I and everything in between.
Well, thank you very much for having me. So Christina asked me to come and chat with you a little bit about who I am, the Community Services Department. I've been with the city now about 10 months, and during that time I've spent a little bit of my time trying to get to know each of the different communities within our city and met many of you along the way, and very excited to be here. We have many wonderful facilities that when you speak with community members, they're very passionate about their parks and the sites that they visit regularly, but may not know some of the other parks and facilities that we have within our system. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that, and if you have questions or anything at the end of the presentation, I'd be happy to hear them and elaborate further on anything that we've discussed or not discussed. Just a little bit about me personally. I came most recently from the Dalles, Oregon, where I served as the executive director of the Northern Wasco County Parks and Recreation District. Prior to that, I was with the City of Portland Parks and Recreation for many years. I have a bachelor's in public administration and a master's degree in parks and recreation management. I joke that yes, that is actually a degree you can get. So about our parks and facilities, we have 38 parks and facilities within our system, close to 300. Again, ranging in size from quarter acre, a tenth of an acre, all the way up to our 55-acre cemetery property. Many of our parks within our system are visited very regularly, and then we have some other little pocket parks that don't see quite as much foot traffic on a day-to-day basis. Some of those parks and facilities are pictured here. We have, of course, the Promenade, which many of you will notice in the top left-hand corner. Kenema Children's Park, Barclay Hills Park, Clackamas Park, and Rivercrest, all located there on the screen. We also operate facilities within our system. The Oregon City Library, the Oregon City Pool. I just came from a library meeting. The Oregon City Pool, the Pioneer Center, the Ermatinger House, and the End of the Oregon Trail Interpretive and Visitor Center. So in addition to operating facilities within our system, we also maintain facilities within the city's infrastructure. So City Hall, the library, the police precinct, public works facility. We have facility maintenance staff that maintain and help to fix and keep up the facilities that serve our community as a larger whole. We also have many events and programs within our system. The Pioneer Center does a lot of excursion events. You'll notice the kayaking event in the top. We have our movies in the park, our concerts in the park. We have summer camps and swim lessons and many other activities for the community to enjoy. So with that, some of the things that we are currently working on moving forward as goals in this next biennium. The Willamette Falls Legacy Project. I do not need to elaborate on that. I'm sure you guys are all up to speed on that project, working with our planning department and the project partners. Also, we have the Clackamas Park Master Plan. So the commission has asked staff to move forward with looking at Clackamas Park and the associated properties, facilities there. So the RV park, the boat ramp, the property across the street from the park property, which serves as overflow parking. So that is something that will be coming up in the next few months, is beginning that process. We also, as you notice, the picture there is from the original waterfront master plan for the Cove. So we do also work closely with the Cove property. We have a trail system that runs through there and connects to Clackamas Park as well. One of our other projects right now, which you probably have heard about as well, is the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail connection. The planning department has been working on this, and we've been working with them on the photos that you see here from the Greenway for a Day event, and was also, as part of that project, which we did not include photos, was an Ivy Pull event that we worked with our partners, with the Oregon City Park Foundation, and it was a solve event. Had 67 volunteer hours that day, so it was really a great event and chance for folks to get out and enjoy one of our parks that really is a jewel of our system, but doesn't get a lot of visits at the Old Kenema Park. So we're hoping that with the trail connection project planning, that we'll be able to get more folks excited about visiting that park and connecting from the promenade over to the Kenema Children's Park. Some of the other projects that we have going on right now is the enhancement grant projects were just funded recently, and so these are all projects that we have planned in the next year that will touch one of our properties. So the Cove project, working on invasive removal, the promenade, which I think John is going to talk with you guys a little bit about that in a minute, the Wildcat project. Ladderette Park, Phase 1 redevelopment, which is a park that hasn't really seen a lot of investment in the recent past, but we have a very dedicated group of individuals that have been working very hard on getting partners together and raising funds, and they have a lot of energy. I will say, if you do not currently have it on your calendar, that please mark September 10th, Sunday, 3 to 5 o'clock. At Ladderette Park, and they will be having a public engagement event, including live music and some vendors, so it should be a great event. Another project, the Waterboard Park invasive removals, so removing the ivy, which is dominant in that park. And Wesley Lynn Park, we have a scoreboard installation project working with Oregon City Youth Sports. One of our other current projects and goals is to work on our deferred maintenance backlog. A couple of the photos here are of John Storm Park in the upper left-hand side, erosion issue with the bank there, Waterboard Park in the lower left-hand side, and then Chapin Park on the top right-hand side, which you might have seen make the social media rounds with folks on little inflatable rafts. That has been repaired, just wrapped up this week, and should be, hopefully, knock on wood, no more sailing in that property moving forward. The Ermatinger House, if you had the chance to come and visit us as part of the Oregon City Heritage Days event recently, we were able to open up the house for tours on a 2-day event, which was very successful, part of the Rose Festival event series. And we're currently working with the Friends of the Ermatinger group to coordinate on a long-term operations and maintenance plan for that site in order to keep it open on a regular basis moving forward. One of our other projects is Glen Oak Park, which is right near the Oregon City High School. It is a 9-acre property just next to the bus barn and next to the soccer fields over there on the right-hand side. So if you're looking at soccer fields there and the new bus barn in the upper section. So this is the 9-acre property. We just secured a $500,000 grant through Oregon State Parks to work on the development of that park. If you go by the site now, it is a lot of tall blackberries and invasives that are there, but there also are a number of redeeming qualities to the site, pieces that will stay and be incorporated into the overall design. So this is the full design master plan concept. The phase 1 development will include our first fenced dog park, which has been very much anticipated. We'll have off-street parking, addition of on-street parking, and sidewalks for folks to access safely the park property, as well as transition to the high school and further down the college. There are some wetlands on the site which will be developed in a smaller way. Eventually, as part of the full phase, there will be some walking paths and things through that area. But as part of phase 1, we will do a kind of redevelopment of that space with a light hand, and then in a phase 2 come back and do a further development. We will have sports courts, including pickleball, and we will have a skate spot as well incorporated into, and it's not shown on this image, but it'll be kind of in this general area right over here. So we're very excited about that. We're anticipating that we will open sometime the end of 2018 or spring of 2019, depending on weather and our ability to get the landscape in a condition where folks can go on there and use, in particular, the dog off-leash area. So with that, that is the nuts and bolts of the department, Community Services Department. There are ways for folks to get involved with Parks and Recreation. We do have the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meetings, which meet the 4th Thursday of every month, 7 o'clock here in the Commission chambers. They are taking August off, so we will meet back in September. And then also the Oregon City Parks Foundation, which meets the 4th Tuesday of every month, and most recently have been meeting at First City Central. They have a website. You can go on there to get all of the details and to become a member. It's a great organization, nonprofit, set up to help support the work that we're doing in the community, and we're very excited. They've been around now about a year, a little over a year. Almost 2 years. Almost 2 years now. So been working with them on a number of grant opportunities and volunteer events out in our park system, and could not be happier to have them involved. So with that, I will say thank you very much and open it up to questions or comments.
Any questions for Phil?
I want to toss in one event you left out.
Uh-oh.
Saturday, September 23rd is a Solve cleanup at Mountain View Cemetery.
Oh, yes.
10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and you can sign up online with Solve. Look for Mountain View Cemetery.
Great.
Is that the same day as the safety fair? Do you know?
I don't know.
I don't remember when
It's the
that
first
is.
thing on my calendar, so I haven't paid attention.
All right. Thanks,
Great.
Phil.
Thank you very much.
Oh, whoops,
Oh.
sorry. Sorry, Jesse. Go ahead.
That's okay. So, Phil, thanks for the presentation.
Yes.
I was recently asked by the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association to ask you tonight about
Oh.
the Carnegie Park
Yes,
name
thank
change.
you. I appreciate that. So recently at PRAC, one of our parks is Carnegie Library Park, which is just a block from here and is the property that the Oregon City Public Library sits on. The property has been known as Carnegie Library Park for about 10 years now. The park name was changed when the library was no longer on that property and wanted to pay homage to the Carnegie building, which was on the property and obviously is a fantastic asset for our community. When the library built out the new wing and created their permanent home at that site, the PRAC committee wanted to determine if the name was appropriate for the park, knowing that the purpose of the park had changed, and it was the Oregon City Public Library and Carnegie Library Park. So Oregon City Public Library at Carnegie Library Park is just kind of a mouthful and a little redundant, and it was brought up at one of the PRAC meetings if there was interest in reevaluating and maybe making a shift of change of name, if it was appropriate, if it should continue, if there needed to be a change in name of the facility. So it was discussed at a couple of PRAC meetings in the late spring and through the summer. A subcommittee was formed to evaluate, including the CIC staff liaison, the community services director, and 2 members of PRAC to evaluate the name and make a recommendation to PRAC. Recommendation was made to change the name from Carnegie Library Park to Carnegie Park, still reflecting the contributions of the Carnegie building, and again just a slight alteration shift of the name from Carnegie Library Park to Carnegie Park. There was further discussion at the meeting in July for PRAC, and the recommendation was made to go to City Commission with a recommendation for a name change officially from Carnegie Library Park to Carnegie Park. During that discussion, it was brought forward that it should go probably to CIC to make sure that CIC was aware of the alteration of the park name, or recommendation of an alteration of the park name, as well as the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, which is the neighborhood association within which the library sits, or the park property sits. So presenting it here, I did go to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association meeting last month and presented. Generally, they were understanding of the name change, but had wished that I had gone to their meeting before the name change was formally requested to move forward to commission. So I am here at CIC again presenting information on the change of name and letting the commission know, the committee know that at some point in the near future we will be moving forward to the City Commission with a recommendation for a formal name change of the park property.
So is there still an opportunity to give comment on that?
There is still an opportunity to give comment, and the City Commission will, I'm sure, open up an opportunity for comment, and I will gladly take comment through my office. And I imagine we will probably have at least one more PRAC meeting before it goes to commission. The recommendation has been made formally, voted on unanimously as a group of PRAC representatives. They are appointed positions from all areas of the city. We can't have more than 2 representatives from any one neighborhood association. We have 9 members on that group, and they did vote unanimously to make the recommendation.
Jesse.
Thanks, Amy. So, just to reiterate, and you already acknowledged this, but there was a vote recently taken, and I was instructed to make a motion tonight to ask you to go and reopen the public participation process and really go to each neighborhood association for at least one rotation of their meetings to solicit feedback on a name change, you know, for this and in the future. So I don't know if is it appropriate to make that motion now, or should I wait until later?
You can always make a motion.
Okay.
That's not something I can.
Okay, well then, I just move that the CIC ask staff to create a public process that involves each neighborhood association before presenting a name change to the city commission.
You want to second that motion?
I'm going to second it for the sake of opening discussion.
Thanks.
Okay, discussion open.
What is McLaughlin's position?
The McLaughlin's position is simply that they'd like to see, or it would like to see, the public process a little more open and available to regular people in the neighborhoods who would like to offer input. But there's no specific position on the name itself, just that there wasn't really a public process.
I have a question. In the past, say John Storm Park, Wesley Lynn Park, Chapin Park, was that put to the public to name, or has it always been up to the Parks and Rec Committee? Has it been up to the City Council who decides?
So we do have a formal naming policy within the department, which is the policy that we followed, creating a subcommittee of PRAC members involving the CIC staff liaison position and the community services director.
Can you tell me remind me who the CIC staff, or who the CIC, I don't remember a liaison being there.
Yeah, please do.
So about a day before I had to go on vacation in June, I get this call from Phil when they look back at the section in the code about how it's named, and it actually does say CIC liaison, which it came from 2002. No one knew that. And so I said, okay. So I was on a phone call for the meeting, and I told pretty much my role is to make sure that whatever happens, that there's good notification given to the CIC as part of this. So I think I abstained from it, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, because I don't feel that a staff, does it say CIC staff liaison or CIC liaison?
It was staff liaison.
CIC staff liaison.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So my being on this call, I just want my recommendation was just to make sure that Phil does circle back with the CIC as part of this, and I didn't actually vote. I was present. I think was my actual vote.
So the policy has been to have a subcommittee. You reach out just to the subcommittee, or is there a public involvement process in that, or?
So the subcommittee, there was we had probably 3 PRAC public meetings to discuss the name of the park, and part of that public meeting was to determine that a subcommittee should be formed utilizing the policy for naming of parks and associated facilities. So the subcommittee was created and met and discussed the options. They did meet. Christina was there via phone. I was there with them. The conversation occurred, and a recommendation out of that subcommittee was made to move forward to PRAC for a name change recommendation. The PRAC committee discussed it at a public meeting and decided that they should move forward with their recommendation. We did have a conversation about if there was interest in waiting further. They felt that their position probably would not change, but that we should move forward with reaching out to the associated neighborhood associations and CIC to make sure there was more information out there about the policy, the process, and eventually going to commission with a recommendation.
So you'll forgive me for not reading the agendas that I was obviously probably notified of, but did it specifically list that that would be discussed, the name change? Was that on the agendas?
It was on the agenda, correct?
Okay, so people had the opportunity to come and,
Correct. And,
Okay.
and I did send notification out to a couple individuals who had expressed interest, including Denise McGriff from McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and I forget who the other individual. It was not. I sent it out, I believe, 2 or 3 days beforehand. Their notification. So it did not go out the full week that we typically do for the public notifications, but
gone out the full week to the normal
for the
route.
normal methods,
Okay.
correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part of this process. There is a acknowledgement by myself that there's no rush to move forward to commission. I will gladly go to, it's difficult with evening meetings and the other meetings that we have to try to make it to all of the neighborhood associations. But I will attempt to make contact with them, if nothing else, through electronic communication, and attempt to schedule to go to other neighborhood association meetings in the next month.
I think part of the problem, though, is that they don't meet monthly.
Right. Well, my question just is, are we recreating the wheel? I mean, you have the Parks and Rec committee for a specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If you've met all the requirements and you've notified everybody in the past, if there's been either a name change or naming of a new park, has it gone out to everybody in any other way, or has this always been the way that it's been done?
Well,
Do you know? Having not been here, obviously.
yeah, I can't speak to I believe Wesley Lynn Park was probably the most recent.
But I think it was part of the donation.
Yeah. So I have committed to PRAC that we will be more transparent and do more of a notification process as we move forward. The Glen Oak property, which I spoke about during my presentation, is the working name and not the final name. And it could be the final name of the park, but as we move forward and begin to develop the park, a naming process will occur. And I will make sure that we have appropriate notification to the CIC and to the neighborhood associations as we begin that process. So I can commit to that, definitely. But we did follow all policies within our department on naming of public facilities for park and recreation purposes.
Any discussion? Dennis?
Is there any objection to the name?
I have not heard any. I have not heard any.
Dennis?
I don't like it.
We've had a lot of. I could. I don't have an issue with that.
There wasn't choices and a vote for the best.
No, I think the recommendation.
So the issue is really just communicating to the larger group of Oregon City what the policy is and what you're choosing to do.
What PRAC chose to do, so the public is choosing to do.
So if I was to go back to Kanema,
Mm-hmm.
I would be asked to explain that. Is that
So if anyone has questions or concerns, I can gladly address them with PRAC when we meet again in September to let them know if there are serious concerns from any groups or individuals. I believe we went through a public process. We have a public advisory committee for Parks and Recreation that made a formal recommendation unanimously to change the name, and so that's getting ahead of the car, as it were, on the next process is something that I can definitely commit to.
Is there a city commission date set for that
There is not.
yet? Okay, Vern?
My question, I guess, or point would be, what does the library think about having their name dropped off from the name of the park? Will we run into, well, it's another park, somebody's looking for the library, some way to put a tagline on it? What would the library be called? Like library at?
So the library name, the library staff and the library board I'm sure have their own policies, and there was probably a process to formalize the name once they opened up the new home. That's kind of outside of our wheelhouse as Parks and Recreation.
Right.
But recognizing that the park has a connection to the library, and that the Carnegie building on the grounds of the park, it was appropriate to utilizing the choice of making the name shift in 2006 was to recognize Carnegie as part of the park. And so the dropping of library from the park name in discussions was to recognize that there's already Oregon City Public Library. Appropriate signage at Carnegie Park made it a little bit more streamlined. And
So they were involved.
the library did not have any input in the naming process. They were aware of the naming process, and to my knowledge, did not have any concerns with a name change of the park.
Yeah, that was my.
Yep.
Roy, did you have a question?
No, it was similar to
Oh.
the question that Vern asked, so I took it back down.
Okay. Jesse?
Thanks. So I just want to clarify that the neighborhood association is not saying that there was some code that wasn't followed. It's simply just a request for more public involvement. And someone asked if there were specific objections to the name. Again, the neighborhood association has no position on that, but there are individuals that would like to have more of an opportunity to comment. And I think that the general concern arises out of the fact that a lot of you probably know the nice wooden carved sign in front of the library was taken down as part of the remodel and expansion. My understanding was that the neighborhood association contributed a lot of time and energy and money to the design and creation of that original sign, and then it was lost throughout the construction process. And so I understand there's a process going on to create new signs for the library. So whatever name eventually is settled on will theoretically end up on these new signs that are created. So there's just some individuals that are sensitive to that and have been involved for several decades on that. And there's concern that the name keeps getting changed now twice in almost a decade. And it's a parcel that is one of the original McLaughlin donation parks as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Oh, okay. She's egging me on.
I am. I want you to share your opinion with everybody.
Well, and I will send this to you in writing also. For over 100 years, that was Library Park. That was one of two parks in the city of Oregon City in 1912 that was donated by the city as a site to build a building that was funded by Andrew Carnegie. Not the land. That was still the city's land. It was still a park. That was Library Park until the library moved out briefly. It is not Carnegie's Park, or Carnegie, however we want to say it. That is Library Park. The Carnegie building is clearly marked, and I would strongly, based on history, recommend to go back to Library Park. And you'll get that in writing with a few more dates.
Great. All right, so we have a motion that we need to vote on.
What was the motion?
We don't know the motion.
Did you write down the motion, Christina?
It sounded like the motion was for the Community Service Division to meet with all the neighborhood associations prior to moving forward with the name change. Is that
I
correct?
don't think I asked, or I don't think the neighborhood association is asking for meetings, but just an outreach or email.
Okay, an outreach.
Yeah.
Okay. So the motion has been, the discussion's closed. The motion was made, seconded. So we need to vote, but it needs to be on the primary voters. So,
You can still do discussion if you like.
okay. Mike?
I guess all I would say is, if we think we need to loop back and reevaluate the policy, then maybe we do, but the policy was followed. And also keep in mind that PRAC is an advisory body, and all PRAC did was make a recommendation that will go to the city commission. And I hate to spend I mean, as Phil said, there is no rush, but we're looping back around and getting more opinions, and still ending up advising the city commission. So I guess really what I'm saying is if we think the policy does not have enough public involvement, we ought to fix that instead of twisting ourselves in a knot in this one case, and then it's going to come up again. So
Gotcha.
that's all.
Bill?
Just one point of clarification. Did the motion apply strictly to this name change or to all park namings going forward?
Jesse?
Well, it certainly specifically apply here, but it would also apply to any future name change as well. It's a general concern. Yeah. And does the person who seconded the motion agree with my clarifications?
Yeah, so far, I think you might want to clarify how you would like them to keep the neighborhoods notified.
Well, I don't have specifics other than to say I was asked to ask for input from all of the neighborhoods, which I think realistically would require a couple months' time because a lot of people don't meet, more than quarterly. So,
I swear I get emails from every single meeting in this city, but I don't think I get PrAC agendas. Are the CIC members on the PrAC email list? Could we solve it that way? Get the PrAC agenda as CIC reps?
Well, I think the larger question is, do CIC members want to have be sent all of the boards and meetings? Because to me, it's you get all of them, or you you look for them yourselves.
I think that's the only one I don't get.
I was going to say, who chose what we get anyway?
No, each board sends out their own. So
I guess my question to Phil would be, if the CIC doesn't get the notifications, and the hope was that obviously through your normal channels that everyone would be notified that the PrAC meets and this is what the agenda was, how would a normal citizen have heard about the name change?
They're posted publicly at all of our facilities, so at City Hall, bulletin boards, at the Pioneer Center, the pool. They're on the website. They do go out to local media representatives. So if there are individuals who would like to be on that notification, I'm sure we can probably get a list through Christina that I can attach to the current list of folks that we send notification to.
Okay. My personal opinion before we take the vote is I would like Mike said, I think this is a bigger issue. I don't think that I personally, as a CIC member, don't want to get involved in making decisions and recommendations through PrAC. I don't want them. Otherwise, I think it's committees going after committees. However, I do think that there needs to be more, especially if a park name change, that's something that affects a lot more people. I think it would behoove the PrAC to look at their the policy, but I don't believe that that's something we need to do here. My personal opinion.
So just a clarification on this motion. I mean, the CIC is just making basically a recommendation and a request to the PrAC, but that's kind of what the CIC can do.
All right. Now are we ready to vote? Let's restate the motion. Can you restate the motion, please?
I would like Jesse to restate the
Sure.
motion.
Well, we need to get it written down.
Oh, I know,
And
but
in the
I want
past
to hear
it's
it.
been
I want to
stuff.
hear it.
Okay.
Yes,
The
your secretary
motion
isn't here tonight.
is for the CIC members to request further public involvement on the issue of the name change for Library Carnegie Park before an official recommendation is made to the City Commission.
You second that. Agree with them.
Yeah.
Is that
So
good
you're
enough?
back to being specifically on Library Park.
No, this is just making a motion to ask the PrAC to get a little more notice out there to the city, right?
This motion is specifically for this park issue. It's probably a good idea to also apply to other things, but that
Down
maybe is
below.
better made.
But the
for-
name change, then what the name is not have anything to do with the recommendation.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Stop talking.
So my understanding, this is for this one park at this moment. Is that
Yes.
correct?
All right, Christina, can you call out the official?
Oh, should I be doing that instead of?
Yes, the way we've done it is if it's an official motion, then the staff takes that motion and reads for the,
Okay, well, I have
Of
the
the
motion
primary
recorded,
motives.
I've written it down, and it'll be transcribed. Shelley?
Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Mike?
No.
Mitchell? Amy?
No.
Bobbit? Joyce Gifford is not here. Is there a second Hillendale tonight?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Barbara is not here. Is Stephen? Yeah.
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Bill McConnell? Vern Johnson?
No.
And Brian Boyce, Two Rivers, is absent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6-4 is the motion is approved.
okay.
Thank you
So,
very much.
As staff, Christina, that would be an item.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put this in a formal email to Phil Lewis, and I will CC the CIC.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
All right. Even more controversial, we'll move on to John Lewis. No, just kidding.
Poor John.
Just kidding. We love having John here. We understand we have an official presentation about the McLaughlin Promenade wall cap replacement project in
So-
addition to our updates.
Can we get a name change clarification on that? Is it a promenade or a promenade?
Either
Oh my
way.
gosh.
Oh my
Tomato,
gosh.
tomato,
Can we vote on
potato,
that, please?
Promenade
I'd like to get a
is
motion
square-
to vote on
Okay,
that.
Promenade is more square dancing. Say promenade.
Promenade your partner. Eh,
So
I'm going to disagree.
Oh, okay. No, that's square dancing too. Forget it.
All right, so this is really a quick update. I think I talked about this at one of your prior meetings where we were going to apply for a grant to get some work done on the McLaughlin Promenade wall caps. And so just an update because it's going to have an impact on those who use the promenade. So it's been around for a long time. It's a facility, it's probably one of our most appreciated facilities, I think. Between it and the elevator, I'm not sure which is most appreciated, but they're both very much appreciated. And so it's an important facility. It definitely has got lots of elements to it, and I think the time in which it was built and the way in which it was built is probably pretty interesting through the Great Depression and the effort to create jobs. So we know this pathway is used by many for many reasons, but they definitely connect the three very important historic monuments in Oregon City: the museum, the elevator, and the McLaughlin House. It's a linear park. It's got both runners and walkers. Not too many bikes. We were talking about that today. Not too many bicycles on that road, and I think that's good because it's narrow. And but but anyway.
I'll get bumped over.
So if you've walked it recently, you've noticed that this winter was pretty hard on the wall caps. So there's 2-inch thick mortar wall caps that really are there to prevent water from infiltrating down into the stone and then having the stone freeze, or the water freeze and break the stone apart. And those wall caps, even though we did repairs to them in 2010, we've just got a pretty significant number of them that have failed. I'm pretty sure that failure is due to the grout or the mortar that was used in those wall caps. We haven't been able to put our exact finger on it, but we just know they're failing. And we think we've evaluated all the ones that have failed, and the other ones that don't appear to be failing, we are hopeful and thinking that they're going to last for the life of the wall, like they're intended to last. So when we discovered the problem or noticed the problem, we started thinking about ways to fund it, and it seemed to align well with the Oregon City Metro Enhancement Grant Program, which really the funding for that comes from tipping fees, or what I call tipping fees for the transfer station. So I think every ton we get $1 of funding, and that resulted in, I think, over, you guys remember, was it over $300,000 in grant availability? And so we applied for the maximum amount of the grant, and were given that. And I think we were given that because it really aligned well with the criteria that grant is intended for. So we were pretty excited about it. Laura did all the heavy lifting on that and got us a really nice grant. And so we're going to move forward. We just received the small enough amount of work that we didn't have to go out for bid, but we wanted to get quotes. We've been talking to the original contractor who did the work, who's taking some ownership in the work, as well as the engineer who was involved, as well as the city. So we're all kind of collaborating to get these wall caps replaced. But we still went out and got quotes, and we could tell from those quotes. I didn't get the number today, but the low bidder was still the original contractor who did it, which is Pioneer Waterproofing. So they're going to be back in town. They want to get it done soon. We don't have a timeline from them. They just learned that they're getting the work for sure today. So we'll work with them on schedule and get this project done, and hopefully we'll do it with the least amount of impact to pedestrians. There will be impact because if you remember, there's fall protection, and just kind of building fall protection requires work on the sidewalk. So there'll be some detours around that'll put you on High Street, basically. You can also walk around on the grass, but if you really needed wheelchair accessibility, then it'd be you'd have to use High Street. So plenty of signage letting folks know that, and we'll do our best to get it done as quickly as we can. So with that, I'm done.
So, I got a technical curiosity because I have been noticing it the last couple months. It's delaminating on the top. Was the old slab retained and a new top put on it before, or was the whole slab replaced?
The whole slabs were replaced. So that full thick 2 inches of mortar and grout that was completely formed up and placed, and it replaced the old one completely, because they had to take the old one off so that they could rebuild the rock underneath it as well in several places.
Odd the way it's fracturing, because it's like it's almost a separate piece on the top that's breaking off. Huh.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do better.
Okay. With that.
Do you have any other?
Do you have other updates for Public Works?
No, we're busy. I wasn't planning to give you much because I was just barely on the agenda. So, yeah. And you've got a big agenda.
Is that all the
here,
room
so
we gave you?
If you got any questions for me? I'd
Any
be happy to
questions
ask.
for John? All right. Thank you. We appreciate it. No, you've got to leave, so. All right. Do we have any public comments not on the agenda? Any turned in, Christina?
No, not that I have.
Okay. All right. Staff liaison updates for questions asked at the previous meeting.
Sure. This is our test of the new liaison ability to kind of circle back on questions that were asked at meetings. I sent an email a couple days after the June CIC meeting, and I attached those bullet points and a little staff report on the agenda, so I won't go through them. But I think our goal is, as we go through tonight, at the end, Chair Wilhite will confirm the questions that she has for me to check in again, and then we'll kind of list them out, and we'll do that same check back. So the goal is we can track it this way, kind of the questions that, as a group, the CSC wants me to circle back, both either myself or to connect up with other staff and other departments. So I have a couple right now. I've already started, so at the end we can circle back on those questions.
Okay. I have too many papers in front of me here. All right. Work items. Goal 3, develop resources to help maintain active neighborhood associations and help reactivate inactive neighborhood associations. So last meeting, we formed an ad hoc committee, and Gordon Wilson, Mark Matheson, and I volunteered, and we met June 26th. Wow, where did that go? And we had a really good meeting. We met in the neighborhood meeting room underneath the fire station across from the library. And I was nominated and voted in as the chair for the committee, so I got to take the notes. And basically, we had suggestions for inactive neighborhoods. We were going back and forth whether or not we should step in, and it wasn't like we wanted the CIC to tell a neighborhood if they're inactive, but basically we were just trying to come up with an idea of, hey, if this is happening, the CIC could recognize it's inactive and basically do what we did with Tower Vista and Hazel Grove Westing Farms, is have another neighboring neighborhood adopt them in and work together. So after our meeting, there were some concerns about that, so we'll talk about that later. But we were never intending to say that the CIC takes over, because as you know, the CIC and neighborhoods are completely separate. We are here as representatives, but the CIC does not control or dictate to neighborhoods. And so that was not the intent of our recommendation. So I just want to make that clear if you're reading through that. The suggestions for helping to maintain active neighborhoods, we felt that the public involvement plan that was developed by the CIC was great, and there were lots of tools there. We didn't feel like we needed to recreate the wheel, so that was our suggestion, is to use that plan. And then we had some items that were suggested to be submitted as future work session and or goals for our next biennium, and we'll be talking about those later. But basically training us as CIC representatives, discussing land use notices. One of the pieces of in the past, the CIC had a land use committee, and it's not to recreate the whole land use process. I think it was just to make sure that people were aware of what land use applications were coming through and seeing if there were ones that might have impact or whatever. That depending who you talk to, William, you get different answers, so that's wonderful. Thank you for understanding that you disagree with what I'm saying. But we recommend maybe if that was something that we wanted to talk about, occasionally land use issues were brought to the CIC and we voted on if we wanted to support send in a letter of support or not. We haven't done that for years because they go to the neighborhoods, and so maybe it was just brought up as, hey, maybe that would be something we'd want to do. It was suggested that maybe we talked about updating our current documents that we have and to review the CIC, neighborhood, and city relationships. So basically that's what we discussed at our meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Christina to further talk about Goal 3, and then we'll just also move on to the goal discussion.
I think my recommendation about the ad hoc meeting, it sounded like a little more work needed to be done on kind of how we can reach out to kind of underperforming neighbor associations to help them be better, and how to implement the public involvement plan that was adopted is so good, and then how to help almost in a sense, I think what's kind of been done informally, but kind of having that formal buddy system. So a really strong neighborhood association can kind of buddy up with either an underperforming or an active one, and because sometimes, like, where are the minutes being, like, where do you, just the how-to of doing a neighborhood association, how do you help do that? So I think my recommendation as we move forward is to continue to refine last biennium's Goal 3 and kind of figure out what this next biennium version of Goal 3 is, and how to keep on working to support kind of inactive and underperforming neighborhood associations. So what I have here, and I put up on the screen, I always go back to, I like to go back to the code and kind of what our guidance is. So I went to Chapter 2 because I'm still learning about the CIC, and I looked up kind of what are the goals and the roles of the CIC and duties. So this came out of Chapter 2. And so as we move forward on looking at our goals for the next, I just want to put this on the screen to kind of remind us our aspirations of what we want to achieve in the next biennium. I'll have a caveat, though, that we may have a lot of great dreams, but we have a finite budget. So dream away. But as we talk this this month, I think we'll head back and have a conversations with the executive committee, Karen, Amy, and Barbara, and staff, and be able to kind of synthesize what we heard tonight, how that meets the duties and purposes of CIC, and if there are any budgetary implications for that. And as we open up the conversation for the goals for this next biennium, I think those are all kind of be swirling in. So I'll be taking lots of notes. We're recorded. After this kind of discussion, we'll kind of circle back in October, because the September meeting is canceled, and we'll kind of synthesize what we hear. So in your packet today is a little staff report that I put together. The first exhibit is the 2015-2017 goals. And I just wanted to go through the goals and see how much of each goal we met, and if it's a recommendation if this goal should be continued in the next biennium or continued and modified. So that's the first packet. And for the most part, all the goals I recommend as staff to continue, except for goal number 4, which I think we've achieved now with the staff liaison opportunity of coming back with questions. And also always coming to me via email or phone if you have any questions outside of the CIC meetings process. The second attachment is taking the goals from last biennium, as well as what I heard through the grievance process. There were 2 kind of topics that came out of the grievance process this last time, and what you see as goals. New goals 4 and 5. You'll see it says new and new. And that is what I heard, and either A, related to let's have a look at the grievance process, submittal requirements, goal of the grievance process, basically a CIC relook of the grievance process. Does it work as it is? Should it be modified? Do we have a question?
Does everybody have a copy of this?
If not, it is all in the back. By the agendas, okay. If the process should be modified either through the code or just through processes and procedures like a formalized grievance application. And then the last goal 5 came out of that question of kind of roles and responsibilities of the CIC and the city relates to communications, and how the city communicates and what the relationship of the CIC is with neighbor associations and the communication between those two. So I have that as a goal. And these goals I've kept big picture because I was trying to synthesize what I heard. So it's definitely, as we move forward with discussions tonight, we can get more specific in kind of the sub-bullets, but I tried to keep it a little higher level in draft goal 4 and 5 to see if this is even something CIC wants to move forward with. So I might hand it back to Chair Wilhite to see any comments either on review of last biennium's goals, and if you have any comment of something you thought that was effective or what we need to still do work on, and a recommendation for the new goals. One additional thing that I brought up on the dais, I took all of the presentation topics from the last 3 years and just synthesized them to see what you've heard about from different presenters, and these come in different categories of specific topics, organization, boards, and then a lot of public works updates. But maybe as you look at your duties up on the screen and what presentations you felt were really effective or you thought really helped you be a better CIC member, just keep that in your mind too. Maybe this can jog your memory of something that you thought was really helpful, or if something's missing or we did in 2015 and we need to revisit again, I want to have this available.
All right, so let's look back through 15 and 17 at goal 1. Staff suggested that we had met the goal of creating the public involvement plan and representing the CIC at public events. Those 2 things we've done pretty well, and suggested our new goal 1 is leaving the implementing part. We didn't actually address that. Do we have any discussion, questions, agree, disagree, as we move for goal 1? Roy?
Just real quick, where do I find this public involvement plan? Is that on the internet there? Or?
It's online. We can send a link. would that be helpful for you? Does everybody still have that? Or would it be helpful to send a link to that?
Please send it to
CIC.
everybody. We're gonna
All right,
ignore
I'll
it.
add that to the list. Okay. We had, just for your information, we met, the subcommittee met and we put together a public involvement plan. It's pretty detailed, gives ideas for neighborhoods, and we kind of came up with it and that's where it stopped. So looking forward, does any comments on that, of putting that as the goal? Agree, okay, no, anything?
Go for it.
Okay, seeing some thumbs and nods. Okay, sounds good. All right. Goal 2, increasing knowledge about land use. It looks like it went from 3 to 2. What's the difference?
So, renumbered with getting rid of 4.
Increase knowledge about land use process by providing training for the public at CIC meetings. Increase knowledge.
There's one on the back.
Oh, it's on the back. So basically, we're saying it's working great, and we want to continue on with that goal. Correct? All right. Does everyone agree? Questions? Okay.
Raise thumbs.
Yeah. Goal 3. Back and forth between rank. Develop resources to help maintain active neighborhood associations and help reactivate inactive neighborhood associations. I think the develop resources and develop a guide. The guide I think we said is the public involvement plan. That way it wasn't carried over that specific wording.
This is the 2015-2017 goals.
Right, but you move that over to 17-19, but changed the.
I think if I can remember correctly, what the guide meant is Tower Vista, for example, they went inactive and then they became active again. Is there something that they could use that would help them know, like everybody stores your minutes and all of your things like that in the office? Maybe everyone stores their bylaws in the office.
I understand what you're saying. It's just not on the new goal for 17-19.
Right, so I think what I heard from you was implementing the public engagement plan is its own goal. And what I'm hearing is this needed? Is having, I think what the ad hoc group was saying is, do you still need to have this goal of creating this separate resource?
Yeah, I mean, it is reusing the word develop, and I would say that's a place to apply the public improvement plan or whatever.
Sure. There's also other resources that can be, I mean, the public improvement plan is helpful, but just in general, there are other resources that can be out that can help neighborhood associations in general. So is there, for instance, if we were a bigger city, if you had an Office of Neighborhood Involvement, you may have just, hey, neighborhood associations, here's some template information of how to do Robert's Rules of Orders and how to not tell a neighborhood association how to run their meeting, but here's a toolbox of how good neighborhood associations can run. And here's a lot of PDF pamphlets that you could use that are often used nationwide of how to run effective neighborhood association meetings. So that's an example of a resource or tool.
Or examples of topics that have been well received at some of your neighborhood associations. How do you share those, document those for the future?
So I don't know if that's implied in the public implementation plan or that's kind of a companion to it.
I personally don't want to go there.
I don't like the statement develop
I don't either.
resources. And you're not talking about developing resources, you're talking about creating a list of resources. Develop resources says to me another PIP committee creating something out of nothing. So utilizing or creating a list of resources. And I would specifically reference that we apply the public engagement, whatever.
Public involvement plan.
Public and PIP, I can't get the words together. That we actually make use of that in this section again.
Okay, so another bullet that, almost in a sense, you're just referring back to that as a goal.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, develop resources is telling me, oh, here comes another subcommittee and a whole nother.
All right. And what about the create a buddy system?
Kind of like that.
I don't know what you mean by create a buddy system, because I don't, if this, just let me finish. At the meeting, we talked about, let's assign buddies. But my problem with assigning buddies now, you don't know which one might be going inactive. You don't know which one now might be strong, which one isn't. So I personally, we had others feel opposite, don't like the idea of right now picking buddies, because it might be that both of those fail in the future. I like more the idea of this is what we're going to do. This is, we'll have a system in place that if one goes inactive, we can create a buddy. Is kind of what we did last time, and I thought that worked better than right now assigning buddies.
And I just wanted to articulate that the CIC is not creating the buddy system, right? Last time a neighborhood association said, I'll step up and host their meetings. And so
we asked them.
We helped facilitate, right? I mean, no, but we helped give them information and, funneled the money for the notices and things like that. But it's not that the CIC created the buddy system. It was that it sort of
That's
came
why
out.
I don't want to create a buddy system.
Okay. Can we just take the word buddy out of that sentence?
We can make it a more informal statement about supporting, CIC supporting underperforming or inactive neighborhood associations. I mean, I can work on a kind of a vaguer sentence about how the CIC can, help neighborhood associations that want help.
Because that goes back to the whole neighborhood association versus CIC and what the rules are.
Yeah. I think it's more of the tools to help them be better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have tools.
Okay.
That didn't bring them back, though.
What?
That didn't bring them back.
No.
Meeting with the neighbors did.
Okay. And any other comments on goal 3? Don't mean to monopolize the conversation.
Yes, we do.
Maybe it is jeopardize. I don't know. All right. Do you agree that the goal 4 for 15 and 17 has been met? Creating the avenue for public comments to be conveyed to appropriate city departments and tracking them and bringing them back. So are we in agreement that that one was met?
Yes.
Okay. That sounds good. So thoughts on goal 4, reviewing the grievance process, code and submission requirements.
I'm all for this one. This was something we've worked really hard putting into the new bylaws that went by the wayside when we suddenly went into the charter. And all of the discussion that we had over the grievance process disappeared. So I think this will help us get back to addressing that, since we found out it wasn't a good thing not to have addressed it better.
So, Jesse.
So I have a clarification on this. Is this suggesting that the code needs to be revisited again?
It's saying, that's asking the question, do we need to look at it and see if the code needs to be changed? Let's look at the process and see if it needs to be changed.
These bullets are trying to identify a broad scale review and the elements that would be involved in a broad scale review.
It's not saying it needs to, it's just saying it might need to.
So I just want to clarify that it's talking about the grievance code, not all of the CIC code, that this is sort of narrowed in scope.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I suggest that should just be a topic for a meeting instead of a goal, maybe.
I think if it ends up in a code revision, though, it would be better to have it in a goal and a more formal process, because it could end up being a code revision.
Okay.
I could move forward and kind of make it more procedural, like learn about it, make a determination if either formal or more procedural things need to be revised, and that is kind of the CIC can make the next steps, and of course a code amendment goes to the city commission. So it
seems like it
kinda
carries over more than one meeting. We might have one meeting where we've learned about the past, review the process that currently how we understand it, and how it was done last time, and then look at what can we improve, and then if we want to improve it, what's that going to take? I think is the
fair enough.
Does that make okay?
And it may be that nothing's changed, but it's gone through kind of a process to get to that place.
Right. All right. Any other additions, questions on goal 4? agree that that's a good goal for now as we'll clean it up a little bit? Okay. Goal 5, better understand the role of CIC members and neighborhood associations when receiving city information.
I don't get that one.
Okay, the city staff will provide a presentation of how city currently communicates with the public. City staff will provide a presentation on the role of CIC members and neighborhood associations and their relationship to the city of Oregon City.
So this came out directly from the grievance process, and to me, there were a lot of questions swirling around of who is and who is not, and how should we communicate. And I think, to me, these first bullets is staff can provide information out to the CIC to understand how the city communicates to the public, who is a city official, who is not. A lot of questions were raised, and through this presentation, I think we can answer some of those questions. But the CIC doesn't have to act on it. It's just more of understanding the relationship of the neighborhood associations, CIC, and city as it relates to providing information to the public.
I would like to see it, if it's going to be a goal, go a step even farther, and that is creating a process of training new CIC members, or when a neighborhood wants to invite someone as a CIC member, having something that we can give them. And you know, a lot of boards and commissions, when you come on the board, you get information, and this is what you're expected to do, and you know, so that they understand that yes, we meet once a month, but we're also asking you. There will be times you'll have to be on a grievance committee. There's times that you might need to join an ad hoc committee. Please volunteer for that. We're asked to at least go once a year to another neighborhood. At least once a year, go to an event. So I think that it would be nice to have something
onboarding
up
packet,
front,
yeah.
and I think that would be a nice. Because otherwise, just learning, I have a hard time with wanting just to learn as be a goal.
Yeah.
I love to learn, but I don't
Yeah.
think that's really a goal.
Do we still have the handbook for boards and commissions?
I have one.
Is that still given out to people?
I'm going to look this way and this way.
We'll
add that to the list.
I was going to say, between the library board and some other stuff, I went through 2 trainings on that handbook, and that was very helpful. And even just having the handbook is useful, especially if you've never been on a city board or commission before.
Yeah, we do, at least in the planning division, we train our different committees slightly differently because some of them hold some authority, legal weight, meaning. And so we'll have a lot more legal trainings and things like that for the Planning Commission, Historic Review Board.
But let's ask our new members, especially, you know, Roy and Vern, Shelley. How do you feel? Did you feel like a deer in headlights coming on?
Yeah, I basically learning by osmosis right now. So, and I no training in this whatsoever. So it's like that deer in the headlights look.
Oh, I can't tell you how many months I sat and stared at William, not understanding why I was even sitting here.
And,
Gotcha.
And from my perspective, I think I have a pretty good handle on who I am and why I'm here and what is expected of me. But I run into a lot of other people that don't have that same expectation. And, you know, either, you know, expect me or expect they have much more authority than what sitting on this committee gives you.
So I can turn Goal 5 into something a little more broader about roles and responsibilities, and then add kind of the welcome wagon onboarding packet.
I think that would be very helpful, and that
But
would
I'll
be a
keep-
good use of our time to educate new members.
It's a tiny thing, but I would suggest that would say when receiving and disseminating city information. 'Cause
Yes.
that kind of got to
right.
the heart of the grievance.
Yes. I agree. I would like to, it's not a motion, I just want to propose that because we don't have a September meeting, would you have a problem just if Barbara and Karen and I met, looked at what Christina had and made changes and bring it to the next meeting? You'll get to look at it. We'll all vote on it, but just as an interim next step too, maybe we can clean up some things if that would be helpful, so that we're not having then we're locking into November before we have even something we might be able to vote on. Okay. All right. Is there any other goals or things that people thought of? No. Okay. If anything comes to your mind now that we've kind of talked about it, let us know, and we can see if it fits under a current goal. If you have an additional bullet point that might be helpful, or any of those.
Michael, let's get home early. Go on.
I agree. All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look at the June minutes? Any recommendations or changes that you noticed? All right, Jesse?
Yeah, just in the section talking about what I said, which is on page 3.
In roundtable?
In the round table, yeah. After my name, it says MNO, but it should be MNA. Also, in the second sentence, it says officers gave crime report, met liaison for homeless members of community who is dedicated to MNA. I don't think I said that because that wasn't my understanding. I think it's a citywide position. So that should be fixed. Also, the Netflix shooting in the last sentence, I didn't say it was about the history of Boring. I said it was set in Boring. So that's all.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Because Barbara's not here, I think we will ask Christina to get her those, and then we'll vote actually. That way we get a chance for her to resubmit the
I can make these changes. I can make these changes if the motion is.
I would like to let Barbara do that.
Okay.
Amy, I noticed one other sentence that might need to be cleaned up on.
Okay.
Item number 6 on the grievance committee report, on the third paragraph, the first sentence says, each voting member of each neighborhood association was asked to either recuse themselves from voting due to ex parte conflict, period.
Oh,
That
either
is
what?
awkward.
Yeah.
Either or what? Yeah. Okay.
So there's something
Good catch.
missing there.
Something's missing, or we need to remove the either. All right. Okay, I am so sorry, Bob. I forgot to. It was right in front of my face, but Bob LaSalle has a comment back on our goals.
Hello, my name is Bob LaSalle. I live in Oregon City. I think most of you know me already. In regard to trying to recruit neighborhood associations that are inactive now, I'd recommend that you pry through the brain of William Gifford. I think he's still back there. Yeah. Because he was very active when the CIC started up again 9 or 10 years ago in recruiting neighborhoods to become activated, reactivated. So I think that's a good source of knowledge you might be able to tap. And I think, Steve, you were involved too, weren't you?
Yes.
Thanks, Bob.
Just one thing that I'd like to point out. We are no longer the Citizen Involvement Council that was formed 10 years ago. We are now a city committee, which has different rules of who's in it, how they get there, and even what its purpose is. So even though I've been here and involved with the CIC, whatever the acronym stands for, it's changed a lot.
Mm-hmm. But William does know how to get people engaged. Okay, let's go.
All right, round table. We will start with Jesse. Oh, sorry.
We don't take public comment on agenda items.
You have 30 seconds, William.
Chair and members of the CIC. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. I wanted to thank very much Mr. LaSalle's kind comments to volunteer me. My brain, I'd be more than happy to help you on that. As a matter of fact, the other day I was going through some things in my office, and I came across some really old dusty stuff from a long time ago, way back, and there were individual neighborhood handbooks that were available to every neighborhood that talked about what a neighborhood association is and general rules of conduct and its relationship. That relationship has changed a lot, but I still think the idea of having a handbook for every neighborhood association is really not a bad idea. So that's one thought. I did need to clear up a little history because I was the one that made the motion to start a land use committee for the CIC. At that time, the situation also was a little different. We did not have the Two Rivers Association. At that time, there were only 11 associations, and every land use issue that happened anywhere downtown all the way to the Cove was felt that affected the whole city, and so the CIC collectively voted on that, but there wasn't really a way of processing land use applications or issues by the whole CIC, and so I suggested that we form a little subcommittee just for land use issues. And as I recall, Paul Edgar was the chair of that. It was, I think, short-lived, but it was and I was on that, and I don't know who else, but Tom Guile appointed Paul on that. And we did go through some land use issues, but we were able to study things in a little more depth than having the entire city do that. Now that every square inch of the city has a neighborhood association, for whatever reason, there didn't seem to be that much of a need for a land use committee or a subcommittee of the CIC in that respect. However, I do agree that all the neighborhood associations need to be more familiar with land use processes and applications and so on. So I just wanted to clear that up a little bit. I wasn't disagreeing that it's not necessary. It's just that it has a little different flavor than when it was originally ideated.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you, Wally. All right, Jesse, did I give you enough time?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be quick. So the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association had their last general meeting July 6th. Our speakers were Nancy Bush of Oregon City Code Enforcement. She talked about the Oregon City permit parking program as it applied to the McLaughlin neighborhood and in relation to anticipated increased parking demand as a result of development of the Legacy Project. Piggybacking on that, Rick Williams of Rick Williams Consulting presented on the Riverwalk Transportation and Access Plan. There was a good presentation and Q&A there. And that's it. Our next general meeting is September 7th, I think, at the library.
Nothing for me.
Mike. Okay. Dennis?
Yes, Karima, we have our next meeting in September. This weekend we had our neighborhood picnic, well attended. We have also in the last month been happy to greet all the people investigating the possible path through Kanema on the extension of the path. And we have been able to, we have a number of our residents involved in that in one or two capacities, both with Kelly Reed and also with the Parks Foundation. And we're very concerned, as you would imagine, trying to figure out which would work best for our neighborhood. And while everybody is sort of agreeable that, you know, we want to display and promote our parks, and we have my attitude, just to add to it, is that anything that can improve the old Kanema Park would be beneficial to both the city and Kanema. The bigger issues related to the success of such a pathway through our neighborhood is the difficulty within our neighborhood in terms of like having the traffic and what the trail's going to be or entail. What route they take is one thing, but it's more important to the residents of Kanema that they figure out, and this would take a big amount of effort both by Metro and ODOT into determining like where we're going to have the parking, how we're going to allow people to access the parks and its connection. Do you come along 99? Do you create like a bridge way across to connect to the various parks? I mean, some bigger issues that are well beyond the means of the people in Kenema, but nevertheless, the bigger factor is the narrow streets, the accessibility of parking, the extension of like maybe creating a larger parking area that already exists at the children's park, which is getting popular by each year. Adding more advertisements within the trail news, promoting the success of such a path, this Greenway path, is only going to increase the traffic along that. We're going to have doubled up parking on most side streets, and all this is pretty clear to everybody. But so the advantage would be, in terms of going forward from suggestions that I've heard from my neighbors, is like deciding exactly where would be the best place to park people. Be that down at 99, but then we've got another issue with the PG&E. I mean, there's some major kinds of concessions and concerns that would make this more successful. And until that's resolved, or until we get sort of like some kind of like idea on like what they plan to do, those entities being Metro, ODOT, and the city, you're leaving the neighborhood a little bit perplexed and a little bit concerned in terms of like what load you're putting into the streets and how it's going to impact the lifestyle in Kenema. And I just want to, this is a good forum to venture forth and let that be known. But all this is being duly recorded and being passed on through Kelly Reed and other entities. So. That's more of a concern currently within the neighborhood, is this the impact within the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Our next meeting for the South End Neighborhood Association is going to be Thursday, August 17th, and we're going to feature local author and historian Karen Morey to talk about the municipal history of the city between 1850 and 1950. So we're anticipating a wonderful program and presentation, as well as we'll talk about the 2 or 3 different land use issues that are happening in our area.
Gary?
We did a sneaky thing in the South End Neighborhood Association. They had to close South End Road, and so just before they opened it, we cleaned it up. And now you wouldn't know, but we did, and we didn't have to have signs or anything. We just walked down there, and it was really nice. Our next cleanup will be sometime in September.
All right, thank you. Steve?
So we had an election of officers in Park Place, and Bob LaSalle is no longer chair. So we need to make that correction to our official agenda. I don't remember his name.
Greg Stone.
There we go.
Say it out loud. They can't hear us.
Greg Stone.
So, Steve, you can send that to Katie Riggs, and she does all of that update.
Okay. And brings up the next point with representation on the CIC, that it's supposed to be chair and vice chair of the neighborhood association, but that's not the way it's done anymore, apparently. So,
well, it depends on your bylaws.
The bylaws say that it's the chair and the vice chair, but has to be appointed by the mayor.
The code is that the neighborhood sends the recommendation to the mayor, and then he will appoint them.
And he can either do it or not.
Correct.
But I don't think it says the chair and the vice chair.
No, in our bylaws it does.
Their bylaws.
Oh, sorry.
So our bylaws have no bearing on reality anymore.
Might want to revise your bylaws?
Well, yes and no. The mayor can't say who gets to be the CIC reps for your neighborhood.
No,
So
he can
if
either
those-
approve or
Right, but it
disapprove.
would have to come back, and I've
So
never.
then we would have to say,
Yeah.
yes, here's...
We have not yet
Yes.
as a neighborhood association.
Yep.
You've had some denied.
Not us.
I've not heard of a neighborhood association being denied as a CIC rep. Have you heard of a neighborhood association being denied their
That doesn't
CRC?
make any sense. You mean they're who they recommend?
Yeah, when a neighborhood, have you heard of a neighborhood recommending a CIC
Yes.
rep and having them not nominate?
Yes.
Okay. Then talk to me after, because I want to
Our,
clarify that.
Sitting right there.
Okay. All right. We will visit that.
Whichever. Our next meeting is the steering committee. What is that? Third Monday. So that's the 21st of August. Then we'll have another steering committee meeting in September, and our next general meeting is October. So,
Okay.
nothing else.
Shelley?
Okay, for Berkeley Hills, our last neighborhood meeting was July, and we had it at the Holmes House at Rose Farm, which was a step outside the box for us, and it was very successful in that we had over twice the membership attendance of a normal meeting. A lot of new people from the neighborhood who swore they were going to come back again. Denise from MMA played docent at the house and gave us a tour and a history of the house, and much fun was had by all. Was unanimously decided at that meeting that we wanted to continue to step outside the box. So our steering committee meetings will be at our normal meeting location, and our general meetings will be at wonderful and unique assets of our neighborhood, so that people in the neighborhood get to see some of those things. Our next meeting in September will be at Mountain View Cemetery, and then our meeting in November will hopefully be at the Founders in Medicine Clinic, so that the neighborhood will learn what's happening in their own neighborhood, which I think is really exciting. Last Saturday was our picnic. We had about half the attendance that we've had at the last 2 or 3 picnics, but everyone was very cordial and had a really wonderful time and stayed the whole time. It wasn't like you jump, we're here from 1 to 4 and people come and go in previous years, and this year they came and they sat and they talked and they really made contact as a neighborhood, so we felt that was pretty successful. Thank you for the police department and the fire department for showing up and taking pictures of people being locked in the back of the police car. We had much fun with that.
They did have to back out, I trust.
Eventually. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at St. James Community Room, in St. James Cemetery?
St. John's.
St. John's Cemetery Community Room is our steering committee meeting. It is open to the public. We will have a presentation by Green Planet, the latest of the many cannabis shops going into our neighborhood. So this is sure to be an interesting meeting, and you are all welcome to come and watch the fireworks. After that, elections for officers are at our November meeting, so we will be starting to talk about that and taking nominations in September. And if there are people from the CIC who would like to attend for all of the obvious reasons, we would really like to have you there as a moderating influence.
Or aggravating.
Duct tape, Karen.
And that's it.
All right, Karen.
Okay. Boy, everybody's had lots of catch up. Our last meeting was in June. It was very busy. Laura stood us up, so the lovely Kelly came and talked to us about the planning department moving into the old media center at the Mount Pleasant campus. We had a representative from the school district. They're going to be adding 2 modulars at Thora B. Gardner, and he needed the neighborhood association input on that, and we said more power to you on that. A couple of other presentations. We also had election of officers. We're almost complete. Ed Lindquist is our new chair, and Violet Stevenson is our new secretary, so I don't have to do that anymore. I can just be vice chair. Our next, and then the other thing at the meeting, we had John Waverly from the Parks Department there. We're having increasing problems at Rivercrest Park and also the upper part of Waterboard Park. We share Waterboard with the McLaughlin neighborhood, and we're getting quote-unquote kids, young adults that are starting to hang out in larger numbers, create issues, and we made John more aware of the problem, And also, I think Ed's discussed setting up a subcommittee to address some of the problems. And since she's sitting around here, I want to thank Dee Dee Dalsrud for two things. First of all, meet the queen of ivy pulling. She takes a walk in Waterboard every day and pulls more ivy. And also our garbage can stickers that the lovely Public Works Department gave us that sat in my apartment for 6 months. Dee Dee's taking care of getting those distributed door to door. So thank you, Dee Dee. She's not even in our neighborhood, but she's become our angel.
But she donated she got all of ours posted
That's
everywhere.
true. She finished Barkley Hills
completely
first and
finished
got bored,
them
so
and
I
was
just
still
took
bored.
advantage
So
of her.
we're passing her around if anyone else
Yes.
has stickers.
And Dennis gave you kind of the intro here. Also, let's see, our neighborhood association annual dessert potluck is next Tuesday, August 15th. Starts at 5:30 at Rivercrest Park. Everything's provided except for dessert. You bring your dessert and share it, but you get hot dogs, chips, beverages, whatever. That's what we do our plant sale every year to fund. However, I don't get to be at the potluck. I'm actually the CIC representative for the McLaughlin-Kanema Trails group. So I will be at that meeting because there's actually only 3 meetings to the entire process. I also was at the Museum of the Oregon Territory for the Saturday Greenway and had an interesting time talking to people that chose to start out from that end of the trail. There are, is it 3 representatives from Kanema on the task force? And equal number from McLaughlin, or?
We have one more from Kanema just because we had an interest from an additional person.
So two from McLaughlin, 3 from Kanema, who can kind of address their needs. I'm kind of the general CIC, hello, this involves the whole city. So if anybody has anything specific that they'd like to add, if you've been following the process, or if you haven't been following the process, get a hold of me. I'll send you a link to the information. I think this is incredible to give us that last piece of connection. I speak for you all. Dennis speaks for Kanema. And that's it.
That reminds me, Jesse, Joyce isn't here tonight, and she is our CIC liaison, and I do not remember which committee, but she said you were in attendance and maybe you could give us an update.
Right, for the transportation committee?
Yes, that's what it was.
She had asked me to be prepared to do that, and I am not. But Christina was there.
I can give the update.
All right, we'll let Christina when we get there. When we get there, we'll let Christina know. All right. So,
yeah, Vern and Roy.
Yeah, we're going around the room.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to skip me? Is that what you're saying, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. Vern, I'll come back to myself. Vern, tell us about your neighborhood.
Well, I'm going to defer to Roy because he's got more of the dates and happenings in the future.
Thank you. Right.
Okay. I was fully expecting Joyce to be here also. We'll be going a lot from memory. We had our last neighborhood association between Hillendale and Tower Vista on July 11th. We had it at Hillendale Park. It was attended by Tony Conkle, and I know I'm going to mess this name up, Diliana. They gave us some great presentations. There was an issue with the mailers didn't get to the printer, so it wasn't well attended. We were grabbing anybody that was jogging by or walking, playing ball. We ended up with a few people attending, but it was a really great presentation there. Our August meeting is always the National Night Out. Kind of surprised nobody mentioned the booth we had there. That was a lot of fun there, meeting people and pointing out neighborhoods to them and stuff.
How did the new banners work? Right.
I'm not familiar with the banners. We had the neighborhood thing where you could show where the neighborhood.
Should have been a little banner in the front that said what neighborhood do you live in, and then a big one in the back.
The big banner kept us beautifully shaded. It went up on the side. And
not that observant, I guess.
They were new, so I'm just wondering how they looked.
But it was fun. Everybody was very, very excited and friendly about it. So, our vice chair, Debbie, resigned, so we do not have a vice chair right now. And I believe in October we're due up for our elections again, so we'll probably take care of it at that point. Our next steering committee meeting is September 5th, and I don't have a location yet. I need to work that out with Joyce and, well, I guess not Debbie anymore. And then our next general meeting would be October 3rd at the Living Hope Church.
Okay. The Gaffney Lane neighborhood met in July. We had great attendance. We have a new sign. We had some money left over at the end of the biennium, and we got a new A-frame sign to meet city code. Our old signs do not meet code. And it just says meeting here tonight, and we put it out, and it looked great. It helped people that were coming figure out where to park, and thought it was just absolutely beautiful. We had really great discussion. Dana came from Public Works to update us on the Myers Road extension and the Malala Avenue grant improvements. And we had quite a few new people there, so really good interaction with the police. It's wonderful that we have that opportunity. Make sure you keep thanking them for coming so that that continues on. We had some questions on on our meeting agenda here. On the back, it has when all of our meetings are. And this isn't getting updated like the city web pages. So our meetings are on the second Thursday of the odd months. Our next meeting is September 14th. So I think when Steve mentions that Bob's no longer the chair, not only does it need to be updated, and so I'm wondering if this is something that you pull every month from the website.
That should have been updated in the revised version I printed out tonight, so I'll double check to make sure that.
It's not. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
And we're out of date too, and I
Yeah.
know Katie's got all the new information.
Yeah, so I'm questioning where this gets
It's a
pulled
default
from.
piece, so we can
Okay.
revisit that.
Okay. I have that added to your thing. That was Gaffney Lane. I think all that I needed to share there. Laura, did you have something you'd like to share with us? Welcome back.
Thanks for letting me stop by.
We're not going to let you leave.
Yeah, no. So my goal is to stop by the CIC every few months just to say hello and listen in and answer any questions or anything like that. So use me and all of us staff as a resource. We're definitely here for you. So just how the purpose of the CIC is to have information go back and forth between the city and the neighborhood associations and the public, and to really listen to what your thoughts and opinions are, and to bring you into our projects, and so we can do everything in a very cohesive and transparent way. And we heard about how the CIC sits on the Transportation Committee and the Development Stakeholders Group, McLaughlin Trails, Alternate Mobility. Well, we have another project coming up. It's another opportunity that we need your help. And we would love for 2 people to sit on a project for equitable housing. And so this is a project where we're going to spend about the next year, but we don't need you for a year, thinking about ways in which housing can be developed in the city. So what are the opportunities for housing? What are the barriers? Should there be incentives? What are the processes through development? Those sorts of things. And so I am looking for 2 CIC members to act as a liaison to the group. And then, you could report back to CIC as needed. There'll be 5 meetings from September through March, and there'll be a public advisory team, and you would be there. Those 2 members would sit on the PAT.
Is that during the day?
There'll be evening meetings.
Do we know when yet?
We don't know when yet. We're assembling the team, and then we'll start to narrow down the times that are good once we assemble the team. But public involvement is very important to the city, and we like to plug as many CIC members into these long-term projects as needed. This is one part of the project, is to review what the processes are, what the standards and opportunities for housing are, and then there's a whole separate process should we want to amend our code to allow different opportunities, then that will go through a typical planning process. You'll see presentations after this group, this body of recommendations is formed at the CIC. So you'll have opportunity for comment there, and then we'll go through a series of planning commission, city commission hearings. So this isn't the only opportunity, but we want to make sure that you guys are in on the ground floor when we're creating these standards before we go through the approval process.
Do we have anyone who'd like to volunteer for that?
So September to March, about
Steve?
one meeting a month-ish, but it's only
I
5
would like
meetings.
to volunteer, and Steve Van Haverbeek. Any other volunteers? Okay.
So I will pass this along to Pete Walter, who's the planner on the project, and you should be seeing an email in the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much. And the first meeting is scheduled for September, probably mid-September. Then the last thing is that, as some of you know, we've reassigned some of our neighborhood planners. So we have a commitment to make sure that the planners get out and support each of the neighborhood associations. So we assign each neighborhood association with a planner. So you have a name and a face to call and ask any question that you want to about what's going on. And also that person will attend 2 meetings a year for your neighborhood association. So keep that in mind as you're scheduling your meetings. There was some slight changes since I unplugged from that process, and we had a new historic planner, so there was some switching of those. All the neighborhood associations in CIC was informed of the changes. Please let me know if there are any questions, but we're excited to continue to support you.
That's Christina?
All right. I'll give my updates and then maybe confirmation on the questions. So for the Riverwalk Transportation and Access Plan, there was kind of 3 summit meetings, and the third happened at the end of July, I think July 26th. Rick Williams and his team were here. We went through the kind of strategy matrix of kind of how over the next kind of short, near, and long-term ways we can better utilize our assets in parking and pedestrian and bike access in and through downtown. So really, when we talk about the Riverwalk Transportation Access Plan, it's also how do we improve connectivity in downtown? How do we best use our existing on and off-street parking? And they're on our project website, which I can also link again on any update emails I give, which is on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project site. Right now, there is a draft of the strategy matrix. The full staff report, the full plan with case studies and narrative I expect from Rick and his team, I think towards the end of this month, early September, so there'll be an opportunity for comment on the actual plan as we move forward to late September, and this is a part of the Riverwalk land use application, so it was a requirement. So it's really a strategy of in this short, near, and long term how we can kind of take down all these multimodal ways we can get through and to the site with downtown as the neighbor. And as always, we had the meetings, but we're always available for comments. Right now, there's actually a form on the website project page. You can still type in your comments. I get those, or as well as just an informal email to me as well. I'll add that to the comment page. And if you have any particular questions, I'm always available to answer those. Did I get that, Jesse?
Thank you.
Okay. The McLaughlin-Kenema Trail, I just wanted to make a quick comment to Dennis. I actually met in-house for staff to have some of that initial conversation. And, having safety improvements in Kenema that are historically appropriate, that slow down traffic, that can really help the neighborhood preserve their parking for residents is really important and a high value. Not that we control where everyone parks, but our goal is that really the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail through Kenema should, for the most part, be pedestrians and bikes. In no way, shape, or form is it ever intended for any wayfinding to get people to be parking in Kenema to get in the Kenema neighborhood in general to get access. So things like a neighborhood parking program, opportunities for slowing down traffic, having local access options, those are all on the table. how do we get a pedestrian crossing at 99 in the long term? So we're hearing you, is what I guess what I'm saying. And I think, like a lot of things, plans like this are helpful because we can memorialize goals. So if our goal is a pedestrian crossing at 99, adopting plans like this help plant that seed as we move forward to get funding and work with ODOT, and saying that we want to slow down traffic in Kenema as a goal. We can plant that seed and see what the tools in the toolbox are. We don't want everyone to park in Kenema as a goal too. So,
Christine, on that note, is that also Metro's goal with the Metro Trail that starts right there?
So Metro they are looking at a master plan for Kenema Bluffs open space. They're a couple years out, and they do have some land that is outside the National Register District, but could be accessed south of Kenema on 99. So they are also thinking big picture. This also connects about parking. Mm-hmm. It also connects up to South End Road, the natural open space. So, that's a big, long picture. But I think in the near short term, they are looking at how to provide better vehicular access to the Kenema Bluffs natural area, not in the Kenema National Register District.
Good.
So I think that's kind of happening on its own parallel path, and our goal is to kind of do the thing, and then we'll all, as all things, you kind of connect when you can. But I don't know exactly when they're starting it, but it is on their work plan.
Okay.
And just to add to that, this is one piece of a larger trail system that's been in our TSP obviously for a long time, but it's an Oregon City Loop trail that goes all around the city. So we're getting bits and pieces, one chunk at a time. So we want to be really clear and deliberate about what those pieces look like to make sure that they're contextually appropriate.
Yeah, and when you get small grants, you take small chunks.
That's right.
The third one is thank you all who took photos at the CIC neighborhood event for National Night Out. I am collecting CIC photos to make to put on our website because I want to see us as friendly and welcoming and not bureaucratic. So I may in October have a nice camera and start taking some friendly pictures so we can add to our CIC website to show how welcoming we are. So I might be stalking you in October. So and these are the questions I have. So you can let me know. I have there was a question about the CIC being sent emails of all boards and commissions. If I could just maybe circle back and talk in-house on what's going on, I can report back and just say what we're doing now, and maybe what next meeting we can talk about what the CIC wants to do, but I can kind of tell you what we do now.
Okay.
I will confirm that, Roy, you are confirmed as part of the CIC. I think you are, but because the liaison is split between Katie Riggs doing some pieces and me doing the other, I think we'll just have to communicate that. I will send you a link of the public implementation plan in an email, so you all have that. It's on our website, the CIC website. It's a PDF attached, but I'll send a link out to everybody so they have it in their emails. And then the motion that was given tonight and voted on, I will be providing that in an email to Phil Lewis, and you'll be CC'd onto that. And the default footer on the agenda, I will take a look at.
Also to let Barbara know that we would ask her to make those corrections and then have the minutes at our next meeting. Not only the footer, but also our attendance sheet has Harris Gwynn and not Roy,
Okay.
so that needs to be updated too. And we don't actually have excused or unexcused, so we just need present, late, or absent.
And Christine, I'd actually suggested people get the impression that if they're the backup, they have to be here because they're on the roll sheet. And I'd suggested before that our roll actually just be each neighborhood, and that we confirm that a representative from the neighborhood is here, rather than every individual person, primary and secondary. Because the secondaries were misunderstanding that they were feeling like they were missing meetings because they're on the roll. And since we only have one voting member, and we had said that the secondaries are welcome to come, but they're not required to come, it doesn't make sense to
I disagree with you on this one, Karen.
Okay.
I'd like to ask the members, but I feel that it's just as important to have everyone here. The more the merrier, better representation we get, and that's what.
Conversation
So
we originally had.
I don't know. Did I forget that? That's entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about the roll call? Do you think that going by neighborhood? I think it's helpful when we call out names. So if we say Park Place, do we want them to then say, okay, Steve says, I'm here, I'm Steve, or Barbara says, I'm here, I'm Barbara? What's your thoughts on that? Jesse?
I agree with Karen. I think it's a hardship a lot of times to get everyone here, and as long as there is representation, then that should be adequate.
Okay. So
our goal from the city is just to provide as much communication as possible, so we definitely recommend that as many people show up as possible. I know we kind of had this discussion, we were talking about the voting, but we sort of are distinguished between voting and then just general information, being able to hear a different perspective or listen or have more ears in the room too. So from the city perspective, we definitely want to support as much neighborhood associations as possible and as many people as possible. So
my other concern is we are trying to go away from having written minutes. We're still working on that.
Well, detailed.
Correctly written minutes.
Verbatim minutes.
We're still working on this.
Not verbatim. Motions, not verbatim.
And so if we don't have a names, that's not very helpful.
Well, actually, what I was suggesting was that you have the neighborhood association and then the name of each of the two reps. But when you call roll, you can just call the name of the neighborhood association, and the people that are here can, tell you that they're here. So you are just checking them off, but not going through calling everyone by name as if they're required to be here at every meeting.
Thoughts? Anyone else?
I think it's, I'm speaking for Linda, but we've discussed this, and we sort of fall on the line of like, it's better that we're both here in the event that there are, or something arises where there's a vote being cast, and that if we have a moment to discuss it, we could sort of better propose a vote that would be fair and equitable for our neighborhood. So I think it's an advantage for us to be here in whether we're alternates or we're the primary.
Do you care about the roll call if your name's called versus the neighborhood?
I'm not here for my name to be called, but
The highlight of my month.
No.
But that's nice of you. But I think the bigger issue is the prospect of having a chance to confer on a vote, should there be one to be cast, and it's another hand on the notes that could be later transmitted back to your neighborhood. So I think there's an advantage of having two people here. Whether a neighborhood could provide those two people each and every time, I don't know. But in our case, we think it's a positive.
And I think that's what Laura was alluding to. We would love to have everybody here, but we understand when you can't.
I think the city still needs to know who's here, so I still will.
You still would.
I'm still going to mark.
We'll work on this at the executive meeting that we're going to have, and we'll fine tune it.
Let me email what I'm trying to say to both of you with an example.
I think I understand. Okay, so updating the once we figure out what we want on the roll call, we'll get that updated. You said the back pages. I would like a list, and I don't know if just sent to everybody or if we should attach it on here, but a list of who is currently serving as a CIC liaison on committees would be helpful.
Oh, okay, that's that.
Because that's something that then we can make sure, because the goal of being a CIC liaison isn't just to have your own opinion there. It's obviously to bring back here and gather feedback. It doesn't have to be long and lengthy, but I think it would be helpful because I forget, and I'm sure we all forget what we've.
I think that's great.
So
definitely do that.
Okay, that's what I had. Tony.
Just a couple of quick updates. Make the plug. There's 3 more movies in the park. Wesley Lynn Park. They begin around 8:30 dusk. So Friday nights, August 11th, the 18th, and the 25th. Sing, Rogue One, and Pete's Dragon. We have also 3 more concerts in the park on the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th. So Thursday nights at approximately 6:30 at the end of the Oregon Trail. Hopefully, you'll be able to make it out on the 24th. If you can only make one of those 3 for Volunteer Appreciation Night, so I'd love to have you all come down for that event down at the end of the Oregon Trail. Just a couple of quick construction projects. 15th will probably be one of our bigger, 15th Street coming down the hill. We've got a lot of the sidewalks are in. We'll be doing some of the paving along there. So that'll be a big project that's still moving forward over the summer here. And then just a reminder, I believe that the City Commission voted to put the request for approval to take on bonded indebtedness for the police and court facility. So that'll be on the ballot again this September. So hopefully when you see your ballots, you get a chance to read through the information that's in there and cast a vote. I think we're the only thing on in September. So obviously, I think most of you had the opportunity to hear about Officer Day. He's our homeless liaison officer, so he's a great contact, especially in those neighborhoods that are probably more impacted by some of the homeless issues that we're seeing. He'll continue to reach out to businesses, the homeless community, the residents of McLaughlin, other neighborhoods that are being impacted, as well as some of the resource groups that we have available to us through Clackamas County, the state, Veterans Affairs, Social Security, nonprofits, religious institutions. So still getting that going, but he's definitely trying to get out there, make those contacts, and see what we can do to address this problem, these issues that we're going to probably continue to see for the foreseeable future. And then just a quick update as the Oregon Legislature wrapped up their session. There were quite a few things obviously passed, but some that were more instructive or impactful on Oregon City. There was a push to limit or remove the ability of cities such as Oregon City to charge for use of our right-of-ways when public or private utilities use those. That did not go anywhere at the legislature, fortunately. So that tends to be something that we see year after year down there, but it seems to gain less and less traction every year. The legislature restored recreational immunity, so essentially you had private employees at the city who could be held personally liable for if they were doing work in a park and someone were to be hurt. So historically, recreational liability applied for those employees specifically. Well, you could still come after the city itself. So that was restored. So that was something that was widely supported throughout the state of Oregon. The Supreme Court interpreted the legislation differently than I believe what the intent of the legislation was. So that was clarified by the legislature. On the transportation funding side, there was quite a few different fees and taxes that'll be rolled in over the next 10 years to address some of the transportation requirements, upgrades, improvements, maintenance that are needed throughout our state. One big one plus for Oregon City was through that we'll average approximately $820,000 in additional transportation funding over the next decade to be invested locally. So that's great news for us in terms of as we collect, and you may recall we've had some conversations about we have our system development charges that we collect. And if you're at an intersection and let's say 50% of it can be used, 50% of the improvement in the intersection can be charged with system development charges. That means we got to come up with the other 50%, whether that's through grants, alternative funding sources. So this would provide us an opportunity to start match some of those system development charges that we have. So pretty excited about that. We don't have a list yet of priorities that we're going to be working on. But that'll be something that we're putting forward, and we'll try to address some of our transportation issues in the community. And then the other one was they identified 3 significant projects in the Portland region along southwest corridor, along Barber, up along I-5 in the Rose Corridor, and then the I-205. And while the previous 2 received funding, the I-205 improvements did not. So essentially looking at widening I-205 to 3 lanes from roughly Stafford over the Abernethy Bridge, plus putting additional lanes on Abernethy Bridge. So the legislature requested that the Oregon Department of Transportation, and I believe they've got about a year, look at the impacts of tolling on I-205 from I-5 to the Columbia River. So that is right now on the table in terms of how they're going to fund the I-205 improvements is through tolling on I-205. So we'll see what ODOT comes up with as they look at the impacts. Whether that's through congestion tolling, what other tolling options they may have. So obviously we'll probably be hearing more about that as the months go by and ODOT starts to work on that. So those are the updates I have for tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Tony? Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Is that yours? Yeah.